All right, I wanted to do this quick video here because on Matt's Fantasy Book Review, on his Discord, he's kind of organized these buddy reads, and I've already read what they are going to be starting on August 7th, but I think I'm going to go through it again. They're just going through the first book, though, and it is Three Body Problem, which is maybe my very favorite, not fantasy, but sci-fi series ever. And I can only give you my experience with it. I had read it when my wife went on this sisters kind of trip with my sisters. And so I binged through the first two books in about a week, about a year ago. It's a divisive series where a lot of people are like, this is the most mind-blowing, amazing thing I've ever read. But that's usually kind of in books 2 and 3, which is the feature. But a lot of people burn out in the first book and is like, I can't get behind, I just don't get it. Or it's not even that it's too complicated. It's like the characters suck. I'm not interested, and da-da-da-da-da. So I want to do a little bit of an introduction, and first to just invite you to join. On his Discord, he set out some threads, like a reading schedule of what our targets are going to be. You don't have to feel like you have to do that, but there are going to be a lot of people reading it in this month, just the first book at least. And so if you want to talk about that with some other people, that's where we will be. And I've there's a link in the Discord to that. Now I'll put this in two ways. Or set this video up in 2 points. The first will be totally non-spoiler, and then if I would suggest you just go into it that way. In the second, I will at least read the Goodreads blurb, which won't give any more than you will have already heard if you've looked into the series. I think it would be cool to go in without knowing anything of it, but I'll read the Goodreads blurb and kind of give a sort of a direction for the series without giving any plot points away. And I think it'll be good. So this series is written by, don't know how to pronounce it, but it's Cixin Liu, and it was in he's a sci-fi author, I think exclusively, basically, and he's kind of an all-star for Chinese science fiction. So it doesn't quite read like a lot of the things that we would have in our Western literature. It was a little jarring for me at first, just the way it was kind of written. But man, I'm so glad I did. And it is translated by Cixin Liu, who wrote the Dandelion Dynasty and I think some other stuff, but I'm not too familiar with his stuff. So some of the things, it's set on a backdrop, the backdrop of the Chinese Cultural Revolution of the 70s. I think it was the 70s. And so I believe that in the English translation, that was added. And then like the first few chapters, and then in the Chinese version, it just kind of went into some of this other stuff. But it gives kind of a backdrop for that. Now, this book isn't about the Chinese Revolution, even though that kind of is at the foundation, at the start, for like a jumping point. It soon turns into something else. But I think some of the stuff that people have a problem with is the characters are not super fascinating. There are some standouts with book 2 and 3, but I could barely tell you, and I love this series, I could barely tell you anyone from, first, I don't even know how to pronounce half of these names. They have a dramatis personae at the very beginning, which isn't a huge list, but it's kind of the main ones here. The Yi family, people at anyway, I'm not going to get to that until the second half. But I think that's part of the problem. is it's not so much like we find someone and they're going to have these amazing character arcs and be these people that we're going to like cheer for. It really is not that sort of thing, and that's typical with a lot of sci-fi. Not all of it, but sometimes sci-fi is totally exclusively about a situation, about what is that object over there? Is it, and what is it going to do? Like, what is that object in the sky that just showed up in our solar system? Is it aliens? Is it a meteor? What is this thing? And it's more about figuring that out than anything else. I read a book called Spin that was about the stars just seemingly going out. And even though that had great characters, it was more like, what does this mean? What does this mean for us? And this series is totally mind-blowing, especially starting with, I mean, there's some mind-blowing, like, wild stuff in the first book, but it's totally mind-blowing and amazing, and does have those amazing big moments, especially with books 2 and 3, and I will never look up at the stars quite the same way after reading book 2. But I totally agree with people that some of the characters are very dry. I find some of them interesting still. That doesn't mean they're just dead and like totally boring to watch, but they are there to speak about this problem, and you won't find a lot of, you likely, if you're like me, you might not find a lot of standouts where once you're done with the series, you'll be thinking of this character or this character. I think about this series all the time, but it's always exclusively about this situation. It is about, in general, it is more about kind of a collective response to this thing that is going on, and that is where you find some of the fascination. It takes place anyway. So if that's enough for you, come read it. I haven't said anything. I'm going to read now the Goodreads blurb and just talk a little bit about sort of what you're getting into, without going into any spoilery stuff. Very much, very kind of high level or low level. I don't know whichever one. So this is the blurb for just the first book, but I think it will kind of make you at least be able to kind of guess where books 2 and 3 sort of go. Set against the backdrop of China's Cultural Revolution, a secret military project sends signals into space to establish contact with aliens. So, yeah, sending out at these different vectors, different frequencies, and things like that, basically asking, is anyone out there? An alien civilization on the brink of destruction captures the signal and plans to invade Earth. So it's like, yep, we hear ya. And we're coming. Thanks for letting us know. Thanks for letting us know where we should go. Meanwhile, on Earth, different camps start forming, planning to either welcome the superior beings. These guys are very, way more technologically powerful than the people on Earth. So it's like, is resistance going to be totally futile? Either to welcome the superior beings and help them take over a world seen as corrupt. It's like we have people today that's like, well, maybe it would be better if someone else that isn't going to blow up the, all the harm that we're doing to the world and things like that. Maybe it would be better if we just got wiped out or fight against the invasion. And I think that's all it says. Now, there are those camps, and you can see how a big part of the fascination to me is seeing how, they're not going to show up right away. So there's going to be some time, a lot of time, for Earth to kind of either prepare in all these different ways. And a part of the fascination is in that kind of journey, and maybe how some people would reallocate certain kinds of scientific, discovery and knowledge and things like that. I might not be doing a great way of I might not be doing great at explaining that, but I find it to be an absolutely fascinating exploration in that regard. And so this is ultimately a First Contact series. And oh my gosh, it is my favorite. If not my favorite fantasy, or if not my favorite sci-fi series, it is certainly my favorite sci-fi series that deals with First Contact. And that might be one of the most exciting genres in science fiction anyway. But it's just amazing. Now, if you go through this book and you think that is interesting, but it still hasn't, I think you will know if you're interested in it. But if you find like that it is interesting, just know that the first book is like a precursor to the main event, which is The Dark Forest and Death's End, which I think are just a couple of the most incredible books ever. But again, the writing is a little bit different because it's not very Western in its prose. It's a little jarring. It's a translation for one, and maybe if you do a translation 1-to-1, things wouldn't quite flow the same. Like I don't know Chinese. I don't know much about how the language is formed. But if it's a 1-to-1 in that way, clearly there would be a little bit of maybe things wouldn't quite flow quite the same. But I don't know if that's yeah. I just think it's amazing. I think if you can get past some of the writing that seems a little jarring at times, and really still, if you are interested in this dilemma or in this issue that is presented with Earth and the people kind of at the forefront, then I think going into books 2 and 3, you will just be on for a wild ride. But again, I think that a lot of people will probably not finish it. And of the people who finish it, there will be people who are like, go right to the next book. And then there might be people who are like, I just am not interested. The writing was so bad. The characters were so bad. So if you know what, if that doesn't bother you, at least you will know what maybe you're getting into. And I just couldn't recommend it higher, especially those last 2 books. So hopefully you join and come talk to us on the Discord. Bye.